Hello, how are you? Thanks for joining. Hope y'all are well. Glad you all caught my message and my story. I waited till the last minute to decide I was going to do this because I haven't really been feeling well, but decided that I was going to do it anyway. I hope you all are well. Thank you for coming. Let a few more people get in here and then we will get started. Good evening, everyone. Hello, my dear. I'm so glad that you are all here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, I am going to talk about the product drop that I did today, the tincture and the spiritual bath. And then I'm just going to move into a general conversation on herbalism and African rooted traditions. That is what's going to happen there. Hey, Portia, how are you? I'm going to give people maybe 2 more minutes. You are on time, Danny. You made it. Hey, Madison. So I'm going to give people 1 more minute and then I'm going to get started. So we can have a good conversation today. Good conversation. Hello, everybody who's just now joining. Welcome. I was just saying we are going to have a conversation. Well, I'm going to talk about the product drop that I did today, and then we're going to move into a conversation on herbalism and African rooted traditions. That's what I'm going to talk about today. This evening, rather. Oh, thank you, Danny. I appreciate it. It's about time for a fill-in. Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. I hope that you are well and that you are having a good evening wherever you are, and that you are safe and that you are healthy and happy despite what's going on in this crazy world of ours. And so if you follow me, which I imagine most of you or many of you do, you will notice that I dropped 2 products today. One is one of my traditional spiritual baths, a cutting formula, meaning that formula was put together and consecrated especially to hone in on and remove, cut, clear any and all negativity, witchcraft, malediction, stagnant energies, stagnant spirits, and all related adversity. When you use it, it has been formulated and consecrated to do just that, and that's what it is going to do once you get in your hot little hands. Now, I have to say, people moved quick on those spiritual baths. So there is only 1 more spiritual bath left. 1 more. 4 of them are gone. There is 1 left. If you want it, you need to email me ASAP with your intent to purchase and your shipping address. Hey, Davey. But yeah, those baths moved quick, and there's just 1 more. So again, if you want it, email me, letting me know you're interested, and send me your shipping address so you can be the lucky person to get the last bath. Now, where the tinctures are concerned, we still have some tinctures left over. And so if you are interested in the tincture, I'm going to talk a little bit about that shortly and help aid you in your decision. And so I will go back to the spiritual bath first, because I want to sort of use this as an opportunity to go into some conversation about herbalism in African rooted traditions subsequent to talking about these products. And so, as I mentioned, the two products that I dropped were the spiritual bath, the cutting formula, and licorice root tincture. And so these were liquid baths. They weren't soaps. Trust and believe, if they were soaps, you all would have had a preview and a preview of a preview. But these are my traditional liquid baths, cutting baths. Hey, Dania. And as I said, the intent of the formula, as well as the intent behind the consecration, is to remove all negative energy, stagnant energy, adversity, negative spirit, and all related malediction. That is the intent of the spiritual bath. It is 32 ounces worth. And when you purchase and it has been shipped, you will receive instructions on use, on suggested use. And so that is the spiritual bath. Again, 32 ounces, liquid bath for removing any and all negative energy, blockages, malediction, adversity, and so on and so forth. Now, the tincture. First of all, what is a tincture? A tincture is a herbal formula that is developed over time in what is called a menstruum, which is in this case synonymous with solvent. That is typically a liquor. In the case of the tincture that I made, the plant matter was licorice root, and the menstruum or the solvent is rum. I used the folk method to make this tincture, and so rather than doing precise measurements, which a lot of individuals or companies that are producing high volumes do, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is spot on and an accurate way to make a tincture. The folk method, which is what I used, is in some ways more in alignment with how I work as a spiritualist. And so rather than use a precise measurement, the most precise measurement that I used was a 16-ounce mason jar that was filled to the brim. I had probably about 5 or 6 broken off sticks of licorice, broken up so that the solvent could get to them more, and begin to break down and get the good constituent parts of that licorice root out of the root itself into the tincture, into the menstruum. Again, in this case, I used rum, and it sat for 2 months. And so I did that tincture. I put that tincture together at the beginning of June, around June 5th, and I strained it and bottled it 2 weeks ago. So that tincture has been sitting for 60 days. It is currently sitting on my altar consecrating, and there it will stay until they are shipped out. Now, why did I choose licorice root? Many reasons. The most obvious being that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I am focusing on plant allies and other naturally derived substances, that's not what I'm trying to say, naturally derived products to support my health in this challenging time. And so in addition to quarantining, I am also doing my research about different herbal supplements, both plants that I use in my spiritual practice, but also plants germane to the Pacific Northwest where I live. And then also just plants and herbs in general that will be good for the purpose of caring for one's, specifically improving their ability to stave off virus, which is what an antiviral supports you with. I have had good experience with lomatium root, specifically for the purpose of staving off viruses, I should say, particularly respiratory viruses. And I had such a good experience with the lomatium root that I tried it. I've been continuing to take it. I tried it in both the decocted form, making a tea out of the root, boiling the root down, and then also in the tincture form, where I purchased a tincture. The tincture has been a lifesaver. It is bitter, but it is every bit worth it. I have had a good experience in the tincture, also assisting me in maintaining good respiratory health. I thankfully do not have respiratory challenges. However, I do have seasonal allergies, and when I get them, almost everything turns into asthma. And so, thankfully, this year, in the midst of all this COVID, I have not had to deal with any seasonal allergies, and certainly have not had any compromised breathing. Thank God. Thank God. I'm very thankful for that, and I remain in gratitude for that. But a lot of my ability to maintain my health in the way I have done has been because I've been doing this research on these herbal supplements, the ways in which I can work with them myself, easily take them, and really just see what those results might be for me. And so this experiment with the licorice root came out of that. Now, I saw that someone asked me a question about a high proof rum. I use generally what I have in the house, and so there is a minimum proof, and I have to double check because, again, I use the folk method, which is a slightly different conceptually, and also in methodology than doing a precise measurement. But I have to double check and see what it is that I use. I wrote it down. I just don't have it on my paper, have it in my hands right now. But there's a minimum proof that one needs to use, and I think I'll do some posting more recently about more often rather about tincture making, and just some of my ideas around that and some of my experience around that. This is actually the first time I've produced a tincture that I am sharing with the public, and so you guys get to let me know how you like it. But specifically why I chose licorice root, I like licorice root for a few different reasons. I think in terms of flavor profile, it's one that is easy peasy on the taste buds. Even when you get really strong doses of it, that licorice gives you a bit of a smoky, sweet taste. And so it's not excessive or hard on the taste buds. At least that has not been my experience. But the primary reasons that I chose licorice root is because it is known for being an antiviral, having antifungal properties and anti-inflammatory properties. And as someone with a few different conditions that are classified as anti-inflammatory, and then also with this COVID going around, I wanted to have something on hand during the fall winter, because now we are going to be entering winter with this pandemic. I wanted to have something on deck that I could just literally, when I open my supplement cabinet, I see, okay, there's my licorice root. I take it, boom. Now, as per usual, when you are taking any herbal supplement, you should do your research and you should check with your medical professional. The information shared here about licorice root is generally available on the internet. However, it does not constitute a substitute for an actual visit to your healthcare professional or actual medical advice from a healthcare professional. For all of those things, make sure you talk to your doctor. That said, there's a lot of great information on the medicinal uses of licorice root. I am a fan. I enjoy it. I'm also going to start using it in my spiritual works and see how it moves there. I understand that it is used in commanding works, particularly on the conjure side, and so might be interesting to see what licorice root can do for you this fall and this winter. And so again, just want to let you know about the two products that I dropped today. Starting from the one I just finished talking about, which is the licorice root tincture. It is a 1 ounce glass bottle for $33. And then also there is the spiritual bath, of which there is one left. There might be 0 left. I have to check my email, but there may be at least 1 left. If you follow the instructions given in today's post on my feed, that will show you precisely how to purchase either your tincture or your bath. And so again, thank you to all of you who have purchased. I'm looking forward to getting you guys your stuff, and there will be more sales like this coming up. I really enjoy making baths. I really enjoy sort of seeing this tincture come to life, and I plan on doing more of that over the course of the next several months, and so on and so forth. Alrighty, so what I really wanted to talk about today was herbalism in Black spiritualist traditions, African rooted spiritual traditions, I should say. I want to start with, some history of why this is specifically important to Black folks and other POCs, especially when you start to look at pre-colonial history, pre-contact with Europeans, pre-slavery, all of those things. Herbalism is far bigger, in my estimation, than just let me order this herb or let me grow this herb or plant, put it together, mark the work, and use it. For me, really, it is an extension of one's belief in and respect for the earth as an entity that gives life, an entity without which none of us would be able to have the lives that we have today, and an entity with which we should be in harmony, living in harmony, in harmonious engagement with. And when you look at pre-colonial African societies, but also indigenous societies, there were culturally accepted norms around how you engaged with your natural environment, how you engaged with animals, how you engaged with plants. When you would go into the forest to search for certain plants that you would need to salute and say the appropriate prayers, if not offer payment to the spirits of the forest before you could go and take. If you were going to get water from a stream or water from a river or ocean, same concept. You would have to go with your prayers, with your payment, and ask permission to do so, because you were taking from something that is constantly giving to you, especially in the case of water. And so there was an acknowledgement that the natural environment was its own living entity, and that in order for us to thrive, it needed to thrive. And in order for us to live with it, we needed to approach it with a certain level of respect and deference. And especially to the extent that those of us in that time period using those plants were using them for our sustenance, which we obviously were, but also for our spiritual works. To be respectful of the natural environment in all of its forms, and to make sure that we understand that our works will work to the extent that we are respectful of these plants. That's a part of the process too. And so I speak about herbalism from that perspective. This is not me saying that I'm perfect and that I lead I have a relationship with nature that is pristine and does not also need to be constantly improved on. Yes, I too need to constantly work on my own relationship to nature. But as a priestess, I have certain obligations that I have to follow, and one of them is a respect and a harmonious engagement with the natural environment. Period. I am very blessed to be a part of a tradition where we still maintain the old ways of going into the forest, praying, offering payment before we take. I'm proud to be a part of a tradition where when we are putting together herbs for specific purposes, that we are singing our prayers and offering our prayers, asking the plants to align with this purpose to support the individual for whom the bath may be, or the purpose that the bath is going to serve. And my tradition is not the only one that does that. Most of the African diasporic traditions are like that. Most of them. In fact, I can't think of one that isn't like that. And so that is the perspective from which I speak about herbalism. It is really, or it should be a reflection of a harmonious engagement with the natural environment. And it makes a difference when you do these things. It makes a big difference when you do these things. You know, not singing over your bath versus singing over it. Not praying certain prayers over your bath versus praying those. You know, it makes a real difference in the efficacy of the bath. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about is, you know, once you start having these traditions in the environment of colonialism and the environment of, say, slavery as we understand it to be within the context of colonialism in the Americas. So North America, South America, Central America, and the Caribbean, of course. Once you get to the environment of colonialism, specifically the environment of the plantation, you're dealing with a group of individuals, enslaved Africans, who did not have free reign over the land in which they lived, were considered property, and were forced to practice their traditions in secret. They were forced to practice their traditions in secret because of the violence and the torturous nature and the brutal nature of slavery. They were forced to practice their traditions in secret. And so herbalism within the context of candomblé, in the context of palo, in the context of hoodoo, of the context of obia, in the context of all of these traditions that came about in this colonial environment and survived through slavery and continue to exist today, was that herbalism within those practices became the tool by which Black folks and people of African descent were able to survive. It was one of many tools that enabled Black people under the torturous, subhuman conditions of chattel slavery, wherever it was found in the Americas. It was one of the tools that allowed Black folk to stay alive, that allowed Black people to carry on some semblance of life within a system that had every intent of killing them. And so I think that too is very important to understand, because it is the reason that many of us are here today, because we had at least one person in our lineage who knew plants well enough to administer viable resolutions to help keep people well, to help keep people sane, to help people go through their spiritual rites, and all of that, you know. And this is something that I think is not often talked about, but I think is very important when understanding why herbalism for Black people, particularly once slavery ends and the United States is becoming more urbanized and more complex of a place, as Black people leave the South in various migrations and go to the North, and were less able, due to the geographical setup of northern cities, to practice hoodoo and root work, or in the case of a country like Brazil, where in the post-slavery period you had a lot of people migrating from north to south, from the northern agricultural areas south down to the coastal cities. It became a different reality to practice your spiritual traditions in a more urbanized environment versus the more rural agricultural environments of the South in the United States, or if we're talking about Brazil, the rural Northeast and the interior of the northern areas of the country. And so in this new reality where serious transformations of the practice were taking place, understandably, and then add to that also what was going on with the colonization and colonizing everything, quite frankly, in these places. And what I mean by that, I mean specifically the ways in which Western medicine developed at such a fast pace, which they wouldn't have been able to do without essentially being able to practice, quote unquote, on Black bodies, specifically Black female bodies. You don't have modern gynecology if white people had not been able to practice on Black female bodies. You don't have modern gynecology without that. And so as Black people became divorced from the sites of their culture and brought to a more urbanized area where they had exposure to what was posited as real medicine, real doctoring, there became a transference of, I won't say knowledge, but a transference of trust from what they knew in the spiritual realm to what was readily available, that we understand to be Western medicine. And then also the very real ways, and Katrina Hazard-Donald talks about this, the very real ways in which an emergent Western medicine, and particularly in the United States, intentionally did things to make it hard for black root workers, conjurers, hoodoos, to be able to continue to practice roles they had been practicing for centuries, namely midwifery, what we know as the conjure doctor. But black midwifery, which had been a thing consistently through slavery, through about, and I have to check the book to make sure that I'm not misquoting, but up until, I would say, the end of the 19th century, black midwifery was common, particularly throughout the South. But as Western medicine was emerging and solidifying itself as the materia medica par excellence, they came in and just arbitrarily made rules that made it such that black women who were practicing midwifery had to get some trumped up qualification to prove that they actually knew what it is that they knew. And so again, herbalism remains, even in my estimation, even more vital as a strategy for wellness in an increasing urbanized world. That black people were moving into, no matter where you found them in the region of the Americas, because of the threat that it posed to Western medicine, of the potent connection that it bridged that gap between themselves and their African heritage. Even though it was constantly being threatened by quote unquote Western medicine of the day. Now, fast forwarding and skipping significant years, but still fast forwarding to today, and we find an increasing amount, probably the highest amount that I recall since the 80s, of black people talking about healthy ways of living, whether they are a spiritual person or not, but certainly for many of the spiritual people, practitioners, I should say, really getting more serious perhaps than they ever have been about the use of herbs in their practice, both the sacred plants of their tradition, but also plants, period, the ones that they can grow in the places where they live, as well as things that they can buy from an actual reliable apothecary. You're just hearing about it so much more, and having people attempting to grow either in their own plots if they have them at their home, or in shared plots. And I think that's a good thing. We continue to see the ways in which the medical establishment often fails black people and other brown people and women as well. There is this continued bias and this continued treatment of us as subhuman. And what I find, for me personally, that there is something that rehumanizes and resensitizes you when you start working with materials that come from the earth. Really rehumanizes you and resensitizes you. It's like, in some ways, a remembering, even for those people who did not, who are far removed from any kind of, I would say far removed from any kind of agricultural lifestyle, or several generations removed from an actual agricultural lifestyle that may have happened in their family. It is real, for me at least, it is rehumanizing and resensitizing. I get a deep sense of gratification, but a deep sense of connectivity to, quite frankly, this land, which is something I never thought I would actually say. But I actually don't have a problem saying it because, you know, my ancestors worked this place. So why shouldn't I? You know? And so that is the point of departure that I'm using when I'm working with plants. And I'm lucky enough to have some friends who are also spiritual elders, as well as spiritual elders of my own tradition who I can go to for guidance and support and advice on these things when I'm interested in, thinking about what it is I want to make next and why and all of that. And these are the kinds of things and conversations that we talk about. But this is really what's sort of been on my mind as we are soon to enter what I'm calling Quarantina Part 2. And this time is going to be during the winter. I would urge everyone to do their research around herbal antivirals, immune support, anti-inflammatory things, as well as other conditions that you may have. Always check with your doctor. Always do your own research so you can use your own spirit of discernment. But to find a few different plants and herbs that resonate with you personally, when you take them, if the energy of the plant works well with your energy, and you are able to see really and feel the way that plant works in your body. This is extremely important. And I would say that would be a good, this fall and this winter, particularly if we resume a more hardcore version of quarantine, you will have an opportunity to really try out some of these things and research some of these things for yourself, both from the perspective of internal formulas and external formulas. And when I say external formulas, I mean something like a spiritual bath, which is specifically for external use only. And then internal formulas like tinctures, oxymels, syrups, teas, all of that kind of thing. Tia makes a very good point, and that Unwell series on Netflix is one that I want to watch. But essential oils are being increasingly problematized. And, at first I didn't really understand why. And it was actually Elsie who runs Goldwater Alchemy. And if you don't know about Goldwater Alchemy, I wholeheartedly suggest you go to that website, goldwateralchemy.com. Elsie has an amazing array of essences, of tinctures. I have taken spagyrics as well. I have taken several of her tinctures. I have several of her products actually in my cabinet right now. And they are just some of the most elegant things that you ever want to experience. The essences are very, very mild in flavor, but they are very, very potent in effect. But Elsie is someone who I respect immensely and who I think is really on to something and has a very, very powerful and fecund skill set, but also methodology for working with plants. But the reason why I bring up Elsie is because Elsie was one of the first people that a few years ago that I saw posted saying that she was not going to be using essential oils anymore. And I asked her why, because I found it to be an important topic for me to think about. And she said essential oils are so concentrated that they have succeeded in adjusting our understanding of what a smell should be. And so we constantly think that lavender, for example, should always smell like the essential oil, when really the lavender essential oil is such a highly concentrated quantity, and you have to use so much lavender to even get that concentrated what am I trying to say? The amount of lavender you have to use to get the essential oil that concentrated is such a large volume. And it, in Elsie's estimation, has resulted in the overstimulation, yes, overstimulation, that's what I'm trying to say. Lord, I'm tired. The overstimulation of our senses, so much so that it seemingly are having extreme difficulty trying to being able to discern like very subtle scents. So she was the first one to bring that to my attention. Since then, I have reduced significantly my usage of those oils. Admittedly, there are a few that I still like and really love. I use them for external purposes only, and I certainly try not to use them in a heavy quantity. I rarely put them in my baths. There are certain baths that I put them in. There are none of those things in, no essential oils, I should say, in the current bath that went on sale today, for those of you who might be interested. But I bring that up because, again, it's about consciousness. It's really about consciousness. How can we increase our consciousness such that we are actually living in harmony and engaging equitably with our natural environment? And sometimes increasing our consciousness and doing better looks like stopping old habits that we had in the past. Gold water alchemy is the name of it. If you Google it, you'll be able to find it. So there's that. I am happy to answer some questions. Yes, I'm going to save this live. I will be so happy to answer any questions you may have. Feel free to put them in the question box. Okay, Diaspora Daily, you're going to be mad because this lip gloss situation is Burt's Bees with no color or tint in it. Thank you for the lovely compliment. Okay, so I generally don't talk about works of this nature. What I will say is that the more specific one can get, the better. If you have a connection with water spirits, that you should be in divination with them to find out if there's a specific thing that they want. If you are not in connection with water spirits, or you have an ancestor, for example, that wants you to give an offering to a specific body of water, you need to be as diligent and clear about marking that work as possible. If you have been tasked with needing, well, actually, let me rephrase that. If you are getting a divination in a specific spiritual tradition where a specific work needs to be done, in an ideal scenario, it should be the priest who is doing that work to the specific spiritual entity. Otherwise, and this is what I do, I don't send my clients to any Palo entity. I may send them to the river. I may send them to the ocean, but I'm not sending them to a specific entity per se, because they don't have license nor instructions, nor would they get instructions from me on how to work with the specific entity, because those are rights and knowledge specific for initiated people. And so to the extent that you think that's something that you might want to do, the best case scenario is to go have a divination with a reliable and ethical practitioner who is working appropriate to the tradition that they practice. That's very important. I think making your own products is important. It's wonderful to buy good products. And you all have heard me on this live, not on this live, but on IG in the past, talking about spiritualists that I support who make amazing products. I have Satara's Florida water, which I really like. And certain spirits that I have really like it. I have some array of oils. I have a new Florida water that was sent to me by a student. I like trying other people's products, but absolutely you should be making your own baths. If you are a practitioner, and even if you just have a personal practice, you should make your own baths. And if that includes making your own Florida water, if you have the capacity to do so, why not? I think it has the potential to be worse than the first one because we will be experiencing it during the cold season in most places in the United States, and thus it will be happening concurrently with regular flu season. And so I think that's the reason why it's going to be, or why it has the potential to be more difficult. From a spiritual perspective, I would say do your works, check in with your folks, eat well. If you need to do therapy, find a therapist that you can deal with virtually. Stay on top of your therapy, take your supplements, and take it day by day. Most importantly, I think you should be quarantining. If you're an essential worker, then quarantine when you're not working. But if we would quarantine, I think we could potentially see a quicker resolution to this disease than we're seeing. So this is not a question that I would answer publicly. Similarly to the question about offerings, that's just not something I talk about publicly. You can message me privately, and that's a conversation we can have. So, here's the thing. With the internet, there's always going to be somebody selling something. The internet in and of itself is a marketplace. It has that energy. You're either selling something, whether it's a tangible product or not, or someone's trying to sell something to you. Where we as consumers of spiritual products need to be concerned is with our ability to discern. This is a conversation that I was having with a student of mine yesterday. The spirit of discernment really needs to be strong upon every last one of us. We really need to be able to see who is legit, who actually has spiritual prowess, and quite frankly, whose works work and whose works move. All of the people that you have heard me talk about and who I've recommended here on my Instagram for various kinds of herbal products, whether it be Satara, whether it be Maisha, whether it be Davy, John, Goldwater Alchemy. I recently just purchased some products from Sensual Siren, who has amazing products. Listen, y'all need to tune in for that review. Anyway, these are people I recommend because these are people whose products I have used. And so I know they work. These are people whose products I have used, and so I know they work. I don't advertise. I don't talk about anything that I haven't used. But what do I think about it? I think that as long as there's a marketplace, people are going to try to sell. Now, whether they're good salespeople, who knows? Whether they're actually selling something worth having, that's for you to decide. I do like buying products. spiritual products, but I'm discerning about who I buy them from. The people that I've talked about are the people I've bought products from. Okay, plantfully new. I don't know. This sounds like an incomplete question. And so if you want to rephrase it, I'm happy to answer, but I don't know specifically what you're trying to ask. All right. All right. I have about 10 more minutes. Unless you guys have any more questions, I am going to wrap it up in 9 more minutes. That's really what was on my mind. I wanted to share that with you. Think about, have some perspective where herbalism is concerned. Is it okay to store my herbs above my ancestor altar, sitting on a built-in cove with shelves above? I don't see why not, as long as they are properly packaged. So if they're dry herbs, yes, definitely you can store them as they are. However, if they're fresh herbs, they need to be in the refrigerator or ideally in the freezer. That's what I would do. There's one that I would recommend, and you can DM me. All right, y'all. I think that's it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all being here with me. I appreciate you all listening. I appreciate you all's support with these products. There will be more baths forthcoming, and there will be more tinctures forthcoming. Again, the tincture is a licorice root tincture made using the folk method. That is $33. Email me if you are interested in one of those. info@negaraekudumu.com. The spiritual baths, which might be gone, I have to check my inbox, are $151, 32 ounces. It is a cutting formula meant to remove all adversity, negative energy, craft, stagnancy, blockage, and related malediction. Alrighty. You all have been wonderful as usual. We will talk soon. All right, y'all. Oh, wait, hold on. 2 questions. I use both. Sometimes I prefer fresh. Sometimes I prefer dry. It depends on what it is I'm trying to do. All right, y'all. You all have a good evening. We will talk soon.